Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Embassy of Pakistan, Washington, D.C. and Ambassador Asad Majid Khan, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you on this special event on Kashmir Solidarity Day. To begin the proceedings, we will first have recitation from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Asad Majid Khan Sahib and DCM Rizwan Sheikh Sahib and his wonderful team for organizing this beautiful event to express solidarity with the people of Indian occupied Kashmir. I also want to express deep gratitude to Dr. Karen Parker for being the great friend of the people of Kashmir. We would also like to express our profound appreciation to His Excellency Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahib, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, for calling Mirwaz Umar Farooq, Chairman All Parties Hurriyat Conference. Qureshi Sahib has briefed Mirwaz Sahib about the upcoming events being organized at the British Parliament and the exhibition being held in London on 4th and 5th February 2019. Mirwaz Sahib has greatly appreciated the effort of Government of Pakistan in highlighting the human rights violation in Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, day after Qureshi Sahib telephoned Mirwaz Sahib, the Government of India summoned the Pakistani ambassador in New Delhi and strongly condemned the telephone call initiated by the Qureshi Sahib. Indian Foreign Office said that this deplorable act has violated all norms for the conduct of international relations. It also said that the Pakistani Foreign Minister's actions were tantamount to direct interference in the internal affairs of its neighbor. Ladies and gentlemen, how can Kashmir be the internal matter of India and the under United Nations Security Council resolutions? Kashmir is a disputed territory and not the integral part of any member states of the United Nations. Secondly, India should remember what Ms. Helen Clark, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, said that Kashmir was not the internal matter of India, but an international issue. Prime Minister Helen Clark made those remarks on October 16, 2004 in the Parliament of New Zealand, just few days before the official visit of India. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the people of Kashmir demand what India and Pakistan have promised at the United Nations. The promise was that the future status of Jammu and Kashmir shall be decided by the people through a referendum, which will be conducted by the United Nations. That promise was never fulfilled. The people of Kashmir have given sacrifices beyond imaginations. Indian Army has been responsible for killing more than 100,000 innocent civilians in Kashmir. But one thing, Indian Army could not do. She could not kill the sentiments and aspirations of the people of Kashmir for the freedom. Those sentiments of the people of Kashmir are growing day by day. And it will be continued till the date when the Kashmir will be liberated from the occupation of the government of India. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insightful remarks. I will now request our next distinguished speaker, Dr. Ilyas Khan, who is a professor at School of Medicine and Health Services, George Washington University, to share his kind remarks.
I am very thankful to the Pakistani embassy for organizing this day in remembrance of the people of Kashmir who are being inflicted with the worst kind of human rights abuses one can imagine. Let us go to the historical perspective of this problem of human Kashmir. India was divided into two nations by India and Pakistan in 1947. And according to the rule of the partition, the Muslim majority states should have gone to Pakistan, while the Hindu majority states would come to India. And there were three examples like that. One was the state of Junagadh, another was Hyderabad, where they had Muslim rulers, but the majority was population were Hindus. In Kashmir, it was a Hindu ruler, but the majority of population was the Muslims. So, by force, while Junagadh and the Hyderabad went to India, while Kashmir should have gone to in part of Pakistan, but by force, it was taken up by the Indian Army. And the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, promised, India took it to the United Nations, and the Prime Minister Nehru promised to the people of Kashmir that India, future of Kashmir will be decided by the people of Kashmir, whether they want to go to India or whether they want to go to Pakistan or they want to stay independent. Until date, this promise remains unfulfilled, and India has reneged on this promise. It is not that the Kashmiri movement has started about 1989. Kashmiris, as has been said by the President of Azad Kashmir, are very peace-loving people. And it is said that if you want a sharp knife to kill a rooster, you will have to go and search 6 houses. You may be lucky to find one. There is no crime. I remember the women with the full of jewelry used to attend the late night parties and walk at the streets at 2 or 3 o'clock at night, which has been lost right now. It's a different Kashmir which has been occupied. Every inch is being occupied by 750,000 army of Indian paramilitary forces. We have gathered here today to remember. We have gathered to remember we are the victims of Gaukadal massacre, where there were 100,000 people who marched to the United Nations and said that we want independence, we want to get rid of Indian occupation, and they were ambushed by Indian army and 150 people were killed. And there was an eyewitness. One person was said he shut his eyes because he thought that these Indian forces will kill him. And the fellow soldier said that he is dead. Why don't I kill him? He said, no, I want to make sure that he's dead. He pumped 5 or 6 bullets and the other person was sleeping beside him. There is the case of Kunan Poshpora. We cannot forget that when during a dual hamlet of Kunan and Poshpora, 87 women were raped all throughout the whole night by forces of the Indian Russian rifles. And the age of the women who were raped was between 8 years and 87 years. And the next morning, the general of the Russian rifles came in and he told them that women, is it true this is all false, nobody has been raped? And one of the old women pushed her friend. She said, look, she is 85 years old, a great grandmother, and she was not also spared, and youngest one. And these women are still from various diseases, and this is called as the rape woman. They have not been married, their life has been totally destroyed. Today we are here to remember Jalil al-Rabi. Jalil al-Rabi was a human rights activist who came to the United States and visited the State Department. And he received the warnings and he left the state. He had come to Kashmir to celebrate Eid, and some of the security forces got a whiff of it. And one major Avtar Singh to kidnap him from the house. His legs, he was tortured, his legs were broken, his eyes were gouged, and after 1 week his body was thrown on the banks of the river. We cannot forget Tufail Mattu. Tufail Mattu is a 10-year-old boy who was one of the curfews which was imposed in the valley, was playing the board game outside his house. The army man comes in and picks him up by the hand and tells him what he was doing. He said, yes, he is playing. He goes, he throws him on the ground, and with the army boost, crushes him and wrings his neck. We cannot forget the sacrifices of Burhan Wani, who was a sort of a good, intelligent student who loved game of cricket, and his aim was to become a physician. But his brother was kidnapped, he was tortured and murdered. And then he joined the militants, what they call the armed movements. He didn't indulge in any violent activities. All he was telling appealing to youth that they should fight for the freedom of the Jammu and Kashmir. He was picked up one day and he was martyred by Indian forces. And then the hell broke loose. When he was martyred, Indian army imposed dawn to dusk curfew. And his funeral was attended by about 300,000 people. And they walked miles and miles to attend his funeral. And few weeks before that, Indian puppet chief minister died. And there were not even 3,000 people to, and they had to get in people who were in policemen in plain clothes to show that semblance of, that he was a popular, semblance of popularity. After the Burhan Wani's murder, they started to throw, when people protested, in one group, in Achabal, people gathered and the army attacked and they threw pellet guns. Pellet guns are the ones which we use to hunt the deers in this country. And one of the girls, Shifa, who was watching from her house, and she got the spray of these, because it doesn't come in one bullet, there's a spray of the bullet which comes out of the gun. And basically, she lost her eyesight. And this thing continued. And I was there at that time when this thing was going on. The story is long, and I have been told that that there are 2 books. And what can we do? Pakistan has to play a very important role in this. Recently, I had a chance to visit Pakistan. I met Foreign Minister Qureshi, and I'm thankful to him for organizing this event in London. But we have to inform people what is going on with the Kashmir. It is not the India's success that has been curbed to the voices. It is to some extent our failure. That why we are not informing people that what is going on in Kashmir. Foreign Minister Qureshi agreed with me that it is not the government. We had a chance 2 years ago to visit 50 embassies, and each of them knew what is going on in Kashmir. But people have to be informed. The government has to be informed, and we have to unmask this terrorist face of India and tell them what kind of atrocities it is committing on people of Kashmir. It is our duty not to have these token meetings on October 5th or on February 5th or October 20th. But there should be continuation of the policy. We need to have a strategy. It is fine that they had a good show in England, but what after that? What we want to see from the Pakistani government is a strategy. We want to see a policy. There has to be a short-term policy. There has to be a long-term policy. In each and every, I will suggest 3 or 4 points which can be undertaken, which could be helpful in the cause of Kashmir. Number 1 is to have the international conference on human rights violations in Kashmir in a country like Turkey. Number 2 is to have structured discussions in IOC. Not just if we meet, we pass the resolutions and those resolutions are not implemented. We have to analyze what strategies were taken, why were they successful, or why they didn't succeed, where we failed and where we succeeded. There is no research going on in the human rights violations in Kashmir. We have to open chairs in famous universities in this country or in Europe, where a chair of Kashmir studies is applied. And then there are 3 or 4 research fellows who conduct research on the policy on Kashmir, and so that 3 or 4 papers are published, so that the world can know what is going on in Kashmir. So basically, we have to go and talk to parents who use this World Children's Day or Women's Day as a vehicle to convey to the atrocities which are being committed on people of Kashmir. With the atrocities, 10,000 women have been raped in Kashmir. World has to know about it. There are about 6,000 people who were discovered in mass graves, and that was just tip of the iceberg. Because the Indian government came to know about it, they booted that lady, Angana Chatterjee, and the one with the local lawyer called Khurram Parvez. There has to be conferences. Unless this has happened, these token gatherings, we can have a mass, rally from Khyber to Karachi. That is good. That it warmed the heart of Kashmiri people, that people of Pakistan are remembering them. But unless at the international arena, the India is exposed, that will not cut much ice. So these are some of the suggestions, and I could go on and on and on. But due to the paucity of time, I will thank you for your attention and giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for those touching and moving words. Distinguished guests, we have a special documentary which has been put together for this special event. Let's watch that.
In the 90s, Kashmir freedom movement was at its peak. To crush it, murderer of Kashmiris, Jagmohan, was appointed as the governor of the state. On the 21st of January 1990, on his command, the Indian Army martyred more than 51 Kashmiris marching on the Gau-Kadal bridge. Gau-Kadal massacre clamped a mourning wave all over Kashmir. Jagmohan has repeatedly shed Kashmiri's blood in series of massacres like Hindwara, Zakura and Tangpura. On the 5th of February 1990, it was the first time that the government of Pakistan and Azad Kashmir observed this day as Solidarity Day with Kashmiris. Later on, the government of Pakistan declared to observe this day officially every year as Solidarity Day with their Kashmiri brethren. Seminars and conferences are organized to create awareness on Kashmir issue all over the world so that international community should take notice of Indian state terrorism and to remind the United Nations of its promises to end its apathy towards the issue. In 1947, the people of the subcontinent got freedom from British Raj and two independent states, Pakistan and India, were created. As per the principles of the partition plan, Kashmir was to become a natural part of Pakistan. On the 19th of July 1947, the representative party of Kashmir Muslim Conference adopted a unanimous resolution for accession to Pakistan. But on the 27th of October, under a preconceived conspiracy, the Indian Army reached Srinagar and tried to annex the state by use of force. Pakistan and India have fought 4 wars on Kashmir, and due to Indian intransigence, peace of not only South Asia, but the entire world is at stake. Pakistan has given detailed answer to reject Indian claim of integral part at all forums, including the United Nations.
मसला जम्मू कश्मीर का हल न होना खित्ते में पायदार अमन की राह में सबसे बड़ी रुकावट है। 7 दहाइयों से मकबूजा जम्मू कश्मीर की आवाम हक खुद इरादियत की खातिर बेमहाना रियासती जुल्म और जबर और इंसानी हकूक़ की पामाली सहते आ रहे हैं। इन सब की निगाहें आज इस ऐवान पर मबसूल हैं। हम इन्हें मायूस नहीं कर सकते। आइए इन अंधेरों को उम्मीद के उजालों से मुनव्वर करते हैं।
Kashmiri masses have never accepted Indian slavery and illegal occupation and always reiterated their pledge for freedom from Indian bondage and accession to Pakistan.
85% मुसलमानों की आबादी की 750 मील सरहदें पाकिस्तान के साथ मिलती हैं। जितने दरिया यहाँ से निकलते हैं पाकिस्तान की तरफ उनका रुख है। यहाँ जब हवाएं चलती हैं वो रावलपिंडी से आती हैं, बारिशें बरसती हैं, एक साथ बरसती हैं। चांद का जो मंत्रा है एक साथ खतना है, मतलब ये अलग नहीं है। ये इतने मजबूत रिश्ते, ये तारीख की हकीकतें, जिन हकीकतों की बुनियाद पे मैं कहता हूँ कि जम्मू कश्मीर वाज ए नेचुरल पार्ट ऑफ पाकिस्तान। मैं कहता हूँ, डंके की चोट कहता हूँ, कि बगैर इस खौफ की कहता हूँ, और मैं ये कहता हूँ कि जम्मू कश्मीर के मुस्तकबिल का वाहिद हल ये है, इसका मुस्तकबिल पाकिस्तान के साथ वाबस्ता हो जाना चाहिए।
The heart of Pakistanis and Kashmiris beat in unison, and they share happiness and grief of each other. Whenever Pakistan wins any match in sports arena, Kashmiris celebrate it wholeheartedly. This act of Kashmiris baffles the occupation army, and it starts killing them indiscriminately. Kashmiri masses are fighting against foreign occupation forces with great spirit and offering unprecedented sacrifices. They demand their right to self-determination, as promised in the United Nations resolutions. For crushing freedom movement, India has given its army unbridled powers, with protection from prosecution under various draconian laws. Since January 1989, 95,234 Kashmiris have been martyred as punishment for demand to self-determination by the Indian Army. 145,342 Kashmiris have been arrested. Indian Army has raped and molested 11,107 Kashmiri women in the past 29 years, while 7,120 Kashmiris were killed after arrest. 109,183 houses and properties have been put on fire, and 22,894 women have been widowed by killing, while 107,751 children have been orphaned. Baffled Indian Army has been targeting innocent Kashmiri youth, even children like Insha, an 18-month-old toddler Hiba John, with pellet guns, and consequently thousands of Kashmiris have lost their eyesight. But no Indian inhuman tactic can end Kashmiris' love for Pakistan. Rather, their love for Pakistan is increasing with increasing atrocities. Pakistani masses and the government have always felt the pain of Kashmiri brethren and provided them political, moral and diplomatic support. Pakistan has diverted UN and world community's attention towards human rights violations and war crimes of Indian Army in occupied state.
In Kashmir, it is an indigenous struggle. This is not a struggle fueled by Pakistan. Why don't they give the Kashmiris right to decide what they want, what is their democratic right to decide their future? But they do not give them that right. They're using the forces to suppress that a democratic freedom struggle, and they blame Pakistan for what is going on in Kashmir, which again is unfair.
Every year on the 5th of February, the day of solidarity with Kashmiris, Pakistani nation, including men, women, elderly, children, take out rallies. Newspapers publish special supplements, radio and television channels air special programs. The most important event of the day remains the human chain made on the bridges linking Pakistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir, where Kashmiris and Pakistanis demonstrate that they enjoy unbreakable bond. The objective behind observing the Day of Solidarity is to demonstrate that people of Kashmir are not alone. The entire Pakistani nation stands by them. From every nook and cranny of Pakistan comes the sound of the slogan, "We are united. We are united. We are Pakistani. Pakistan belongs to us."
Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to request Mr. Rizwan Kadir to deliver his presentation. Mr. Rizwan has served in various leadership roles in Muslim, Pakistani and Kashmiri communities. He also speaks on financial, geopolitical and interfaith topics at various professional forums.
Dear Embassy of Pakistan team, DCM Chair, Mr. Ambassador, friends, good evening, Assalamu Alaikum. Thanks for the introduction, Sidra. It's a great honor to be here. I'm from Chicago, and it's part of pride to me and my family that we have been invited to speak at the Chicago Consulate ever since we started observing the Black Day in October and the Kashmir Solidarity Day some 8 years ago. Can we give the lights, please? Thank you. So a quick word about the background. Those of you who are familiar with making presentations in corporate America, you know this is a no-no. You do not use black background and red font. But why am I using it? It's reflective of the situation that we're talking about. A dominant black background in this presentation reflects the bleakness among the Kashmiris over the last 70 years. The red font is for the bloodied history that we have been talking about this evening. The light on the horizon, however, represents the eternal optimism that we Muslims believe in. I'd like to dedicate whatever less than 2 cents worth of work I have been doing for Kashmir to these young people. This is a made-up picture of a hypothetical classroom. The previous speakers have been talking about victims of pellet guns, and here's the picture that represents that. It's a hypothetical classroom where you're missing students. Roll call number 19, arrested. Roll call number 7, cannot come, cannot study, because he has been blinded. And roll call number 1, killed by the occupied forces. There are no girls in this picture, but they are just as many victims as young boys are. A little personal trajectory of my family. On my grandfather's side, we started out some 500 years ago in Khatlan, Tajikistan, and ended up in Kashmir. On my grandmother's side, we started in Darab, Iran, and ended up in Kashmir. And after 1947, a number of my family members immigrated to the new state of Pakistan with the hope and desire that Kashmir will become part of Pakistan. It hasn't. And here's the significance of this Kashmir Solidarity Day. It's not just a government observance. It's something that people observe. The Kashmir dispute is the oldest unresolved international conflict in the world. The issue hasn't been resolved yet, we know that, but it hasn't been defeated either. Without Pakistan and Pakistanis internationally, there wouldn't be any awareness of the issue. And that's why there's great significance to observing this day every year with ever greater determination. To make the point more palatable to Kashmiris on the Indian side, I'd like to point out something. This is anecdotal data, but scientifically observed too. Every 4th or 5th Pakistani throughout the world has Kashmiri heritage or family connections. No other country in the world can claim that privilege. And of course, we are also guided by well-known hadiths of our Prophet ﷺ that whatever happens in Kashmir impacts the rest of the Muslim world, not just Pakistan. Kashmir from time immemorial has been called heaven on earth. Here's a quote from an American traveler in 1914, more than 100 years ago. He said, "Here we have the most splendid amphitheater in the world." And these are just a small glimpse of the beauty, natural beauty of the land of Kashmir. An introduction. Kashmir is perhaps the only region in the world that's surrounded by 3 nuclear powers. That alone places a great deal of significance to it. It's been in dispute between India and Pakistan since the independence from British in 1947. Both countries claim Kashmir as part of their territory as a country. 4 wars have been fought. The Indian-occupied Kashmir consists of Jammu, the Kashmir Valley, and Ladakh. Jammu is the winter capital of Srinagar, while the Srinagar is the summer capital. So an issue in the mind of a lot of Pakistani Americans, and our friends, Muslims or non-Muslims, is, so what is the Kashmir issue? When I started making these presentations, raising the awareness in Chicago about a decade ago, a number of Muslim organizations wanted to know what the Kashmir issue is, something they had heard all their lives, but didn't know what it was. So here's this little glimpse, little summary of it. The sequence of events is very important. So we need to go into a little bit of details here. In 1947, at the end of the British rule in India, the provinces were given the right to accede based on religious majority. There were 500 plus princely states in India at the time also who were afforded the same option. And the formula worked very well except for 4 states. Kashmir was the largest one, which had a vast Muslim majority, over 85%, but a Hindu ruler. In spring of 1947, protests against the Maharaja of Kashmir tax policy led to a rebellion. In July, the majority Muslim conference, and this was mentioned in the documentary that we saw, passed a resolution wanting to join the new state of Pakistan. 2 leading Kashmiri Hindu pundits were also in favor of joining Pakistan. Ramchandra Kak, who was Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, and he was obviously sacked because of his views of joining Pakistan. And Premnath Bazaz, a famous politician and writer, he was later on jailed. So on August 14th and 15th, as we know, Pakistan and India became independent countries. The Maharaja asked for a standstill agreement with both countries. Pakistan agreed, India didn't. These are key points to remember in the issue. Next, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah asked the Maharaja of Kashmir of his desire to visit Kashmir in September for vacation. Maharaja declined, raising suspicions about his intentions, about the validity of the standstill agreement. At the same time, Pakistan received intelligence reports that Indian forces were being ready because they had been invited to Kashmir. Over the next few months, communal riots in Jammu led to 150,000 to 250,000 massacre of Muslims. That's something that we haven't talked about in this narrative, in this discourse. October 47, a ragtag militia of Pakistani tribes went in Kashmir to intervene. Maharaja asked for India's help. Lord Mountbatten, who was the Governor General of India at the time, agreed to provide help only if Kashmir joins India, with the understanding that this is a temporary arrangement. The temporary arrangement has been going on for 70 years. The Indian forces were airlifted to Srinagar, and that was made possible. You saw the video of Indian forces landing in Kashmir. That was made possible by an abject violation of the Division Acts. A special passage through Gurdaspur was made possible. On October 27, 1947, Maharaja signed the Instrument of Accession. This is the document that we have been talking about. For the longest time, nobody knew about it. Now it's at the Indian National Archives. The document, and shows the hypocrisy of the claim that it was Pakistan who initiated the Kashmir issue. The document here, I'm sorry about the small print. If someone is interested, I can give you the link. Was typed with the date August 25th, 1947. It's signed by Lord Mountbatten in on October 27th. He crossed out the August date and wrote 27. The point being that there were plans to join India long before anyone supposedly invaded Kashmir. Subsequently, there were UN resolutions. Over the last many years, 23 UN resolutions have been adapted. The gist of it is that Kashmir is not an integral part of India. No solution to the Kashmir issue will be made possible without the voice of Kashmiris on both sides. The UN resolutions are the constitutional base for any solution that anyone comes up with. Pakistan adheres to these resolutions, and they are binding on India too. Here's a picture from November 1950. This scroll has over 1 million signatures signed by Pakistanis all over the globe. It was their version of cutting and pasting. 1 million people in 1950 signed this document, and it was sent to the UN. On a personal note, my father's signature appears there too. He signed it in his blood, as did millions of other Kashmiris. Why is it that we do not know much about the Kashmir issue? In the US, in the Muslim American community, we talk about all the different issues, and we make things happen, but not Kashmir. So part of the lack of awareness are a couple of things. Unlike Jerusalem, there is no religious significance for Muslims to Kashmir. Kashmir themselves have been careful not to paint this as a religious conflict, even though we talk about majority Muslims and minority Hindus and the logical conclusion of that. Nonetheless, these two communities, along with others, have been living harmoniously in Kashmir for centuries. The other reason for the lack of awareness is that India, for the most part, hasn't allowed many journalists. The freedom of the press in Kashmir is limited and constrained, and the acts of bravery by the Kashmiri journalists is extremely commendable. Human rights violations. A number of speakers have talked about it. These numbers, first of all, they're kind of old. But we need to go beyond these numbers. It doesn't matter if it's 107,000 or 120,000 people who have been dead now, who have been killed, or number of rapes. These are the families we are talking about. So it's not 107,000 people who just got killed. It's 107,000 families who have been destroyed for centuries. In 1958, on a personal note, Indian Army walked into one of our family compounds and promised that when they leave, not promised, threatened that when they leave, they would walk out with 8 heads, because there were 8 brothers who lived with their respective families in that compound. Thankfully, that didn't happen, but imagine if an army lives in your family compound for over a month. It tarnished at least the next 2 generations of that family. These are the categories, and this is what I'd like our friends to remember. These are the different categories of human rights violations in Kashmir. So it's not just a single category that we talk about. It's the denial of holding peaceful demonstrations. It's enforced disappearances. That's a phrase that appeared probably for the first time in the Kashmir issue. Torture of children, sexual torture of women and men. There's an Indian TV producer, Ashwin Kumar. He has produced a documentary called Inshallah Kashmir, where he interviews men who are in their 40s and 50s by that time, who were sexually assaulted when they were in their teens and 20s. But because of cultural sensibilities, these men could not talk about the stigma that they carried for all those years. These are some of the acronyms that you have heard throughout this evening. Amnesty International called it a lawless law, and it has been in the books, on the books since 1950s. I was talking about looking beyond the numbers. Here's a collage of pictures. I would like you to focus on some of the things. First, look at this. A sister is saying goodbye to her young brother. Look at the helplessness and haplessness on her face. Look at her outstretched arms and what that reflects. Here's another one. This is main downtown Srinagar. This is Lal Chowk. A young man is lying around on the streets. He's been dead. He's been shot dead. It's unfortunate that he's wearing brown colored clothes which make it look like military fatigue, but he was not a militia. He was an ordinary citizen. And Indian Army soldiers are walking around. The callousness and dignity of that. That's something that Kashmiris have been doing day in and day out. And this is just one tiny little example. There's an old man beseeching God because that's all you're left to do. Lastly, the grandmother is saying goodbye to her grandchild. Look at her face. Look at her face, man. There are no tears. There's no tears. But then at the same time, look at the determination on her face that this blood is not going to go in vain. And that's the determination that Kashmiris and friends of Kashmiris have carried throughout the last 3 generations. I titled tonight's presentation as Imagine Peace, because that's what we have been talking about. But why? What will that accomplish? A peace in Kashmir will marginalize any extremist agenda, and that is true of any conflict in the world, whether it's in Palestine or anywhere else. A peaceful settlement will allow Kashmiris to enjoy the economic benefits of peace. We talk about peace benefits, peace dividends, since President Clinton first came up with it. It applies to Kashmiris as well. The ultimate responsibility, however, is to find the solution, and Kashmiris have to take responsibility for that too. And unless and until the Kashmiri dispute is settled, a just and fair, equitable settlement by the voice of Kashmiri people everywhere, there cannot be any normalization of relations between India and Pakistan. Here's a poem by Kashmiri American poet Agha Shahid Ali, who passed away a few years ago in Connecticut. We shall meet again in Srinagar, by the gates of the Villa of Peace, our hands blossoming into fists, till the soldiers return the keys and disappear. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your detailed presentation. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you and Ms. Parker, who has traveled from Chicago and she from San Francisco, to grace us with their presence today. Ms. Parker is the President, Association of Humanitarian Lawyers and Chief Delegate to the United Nations Humanitarian Law Project of International Educational Development. She will dilate upon the topic, Kashmir and its international legitimacy. Madam, please.
Mr. Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, I first became involved in the issue of Kashmir at the United Nations in 1990 when I presented a written statement that was entitled, "The Situation in Kashmir." There was a bit of a controversy over that because the United Nations can't publish a document about a country that isn't a member of the United Nations, or that you can't name a country. But I argued that Kashmir didn't belong to either India or Pakistan and was a disputed territory. Therefore, it was acceptable to publish the piece, "The Situation in Kashmir," and I won that point. So it was in fact published. Part of it was based on the investigation that Justice Sachin from India had made following the events in 1989 and 1990. And in that paper, I also talked about the right to self-determination of the Kashmiri people. Now, a lot of people use the term self-determination without knowing what it means. What is the basis of self-determination? And if you are going to go to members of Congress or to friends or to community groups and say Kashmir has the right to self-determination, and someone says, why, or how do you know that? I think it's important that you know the 5-part test for self-determination and then apply it to Kashmir, and you will see it's extremely difficult for anyone to deny that Kashmir has the right to self-determination. The 5-part test includes territory. I think we all know the territory of Kashmir. Then it involves history. What has gone on in the history of Kashmir? It has been Kashmiri run, basically, for all practical purposes, for a really, really, really long time. And a third element is basically culture. There has to be a little difference between, say, India and Kashmiris. And without getting into religion, because the issue is not, I agree with the last speaker, the issue is not religion, but it does involve culture. Kashmiri things, Kashmiri objects, Kashmiri ways that are significantly different from those of India. And then since the founding of the United Nations, there have been 2 additional elements added to self-determination. One is the will. Do these people want to exercise the right to self-determination? The United Nations doesn't want to give a people a country that they don't want. And the third, the final point is, do they have the capacity? And I think anyone who knows anything about the Kashmiri people, both in Kashmir and in the diaspora, knows that there is no doubt whatsoever that Kashmiris have the capacity to be self-governing. One of the problems in addressing the situation of Jammu and Kashmir in the United Nations has been, in fact, in part, because of the Kashmiri people themselves. When I made that statement, that written statement, and then spoke on the issue at the United Nations, I had never met a Kashmiri. Subsequent to that, many Kashmiris came, they started coming, Kashmiri people started coming to the United Nations. But they came with different factions. And in the United Nations, governments want to know, well, but who are you? And then, who are you? Or you go to speak to a delegate, and the delegate says, well, I spoke to so-and-so. And the Kashmiri would say, yeah, but I'm over here. That, unfortunately, led to the government of India being able to divide and conquer. And it had been, and has been, quite effective for a really, really long time. A lot of Kashmiris have made speeches on the floor to no avail, basically. And they tend to make the same speech. So other non-governmental organizations actually get tired of hearing about this Kashmiri issue, which is horrible. It's horrible to think that that would happen in the United Nations. But it has happened. And one of what I've learned in years and years and years at the United Nations is that the people want to know who's in charge of that delegation, who really represents the Kashmiri people. And I've said to the Kashmiri groups, you need to be unified until you get the right to self-determination. When you have the right to self-determination, you can break off into your own political parties or groups or whatever. But you have to get it first. Don't argue it on the floor of the United Nations. India, of course, has repeatedly and regularly said, as you've heard tonight, Kashmir is an integral part of India. They say it over and over. One of the things they're a little nervous about, however, is identifying any of the Kashmiri groups as terrorists. They sort of sashay around talking about the terrorist issue. In fact, at the United Nations Committee on Terrorism that the United States set up after 9/11, India kind of sashays around, as I say, and they don't really take strong issue with any particular Kashmiri group. This is because the United States and other organizations and other states and organizations have also not identified any particular group in Kashmir as a terrorist organization. Now, one of the issues also is in the United Nations, you have to walk the floor. By that, I mean, you don't just talk to your friends and other NGOs who know the issue and know you really well. You go up to the governments and you argue with the governments. They're the ones who vote. So you can have 10 or 15 side events, we call them side events, where you get the same group of people and they say the same thing over and over, but you don't have the governments there, and the governments are the ones to vote. I've been walking the floor. Sometimes it's extremely difficult because you're countering India. But when I talk to governments, they actually agree with me. But there hasn't been a combined political will in the Human Rights Council to pass a resolution. I've also spoken with the High Commissioners for Human Rights at the United Nations and raised these issues over and over again. Well, lo and behold, in the session this past June, the High Commissioner for Human Rights spoke and said that the people in Kashmir had the right to a plebiscite, and at the United Nations Human Rights Council should carry out a commission of inquiry into the situation. I could have written that speech for him because of what I had been saying for years and years. That was a sea change. It was a sea change. And I'm probably accurate in saying not a person in this room, or very few people in this room, knew that. So, the High Commissioner was replaced. He decided not to run again. He was replaced by a Chilean woman, Michelle Bachelet, who first took the leadership in the September session. And guess what she said? She said exactly the same thing. She said exactly the same thing. So we have two High Commissioners of the United Nations saying what we've been saying in this room all evening and what Kashmiris have been saying all along for 70 years. Now, there's a session of the United Nations coming up in March. I'm, in fact, leaving in 2 weeks to go there. It is going to be extremely critical to bring that issue on the floor, delegation by delegation, saying, this is what the High Commissioner said, this is what the High Commissioner said, you should do it. And my bet is, if we get the Kashmiris who were there on the same page with recognized leadership, and we all walk the floor, we may very well get the Human Rights Council to appoint a commission of inquiry. This would be absolutely phenomenal, and the government of India would cave. Modi is up for re-election in the spring. He can't afford to be considered a really bad guy at the United Nations. So I will also encourage that people submit information to other United Nations personnel. For instance, there's a special advisor to the Secretary General on the prevention of genocide and mass atrocities. How many of you have sent him information that was presented here tonight? His name is Adama Dieng. He's from Senegal. He's a long time friend of mine, and I met him at the September session, which was the last session, and he would welcome. So if we had two High Commissioners and statements from the Special Advisor to the Secretary General on the prevention of genocide and mass atrocities, which in fact weren't prevented, I think we have a very strong posture, and I have to say, it is the best situation in the United Nations that I have seen on this issue in my 36 years at the UN. So hopefully we will all work together and we will make big steps.
Thank you, Madam, for your informative and insightful remarks. May I now request Ambassador Taqir Hussain to kindly share his views. Ambassador Taqir has formerly served as Pakistan's ambassador to Brazil, Spain, and Japan. He is currently pursuing an academic career and is teaching as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University.
Excellency Ambassador Asad Majid Khan, Honorable Kashmiri leaders, distinguished academics, dear guests, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Let me begin by welcoming Ambassador Asad Majid Khan, who has just joined his post. And I tell you, after having known him for many years, that he is the best of the best that Pakistani Foreign Service has to offer. I couldn't be happier. And he is supported by an excellent team. And I assure you, Pakistan, US-Pakistan relations and the Kashmir cause could not have been in better hands. Believe me. And just sort of give him encouragement and support and applause, and I hope we commemorate the Kashmir Solidarity Day every year. In ceremonies in Pakistan and abroad, we speak with pain and sorrow about the unspeakable human tragedy. In between, for a year, we live in an illusion that equates the depth of our anguish and moral outrage with our support for the Kashmir cause. The sad reality is, this is not enough. And I think occasions like this should be used to identify the challenges and see how best we can overcome them. That's what I intend doing. The object is to help the Kashmir cause, not just to commemorate it. To move forward, that's the idea. In my view, there are 4 ingredients of a successful strategy for the Kashmir cause. First and foremost, the people of Kashmir and their valiant and noble struggle. They hold the key. The second is the Kashmiri leadership. Third, Pakistan's diplomacy. And fourth, the campaign by the Kashmiri diaspora and the overseas Pakistanis. All of these ingredients need to put a coordinated pressure on India. And there are 4 instruments of putting that pressure. First instrument is the international community, especially big powers, particularly those having leverage with India. Second is the oil-rich and influential Islamic countries. Third is the UN, especially international human rights organizations, human rights commission. Fourth is the Pakistan-India relations. All these act as levers. Let's look at all the 4 ingredients before looking at all the 4 instruments. First and foremost, as I said, the Kashmiri resistance. Kashmir stands at an historic moment. Kashmir has been restless ever since the Indian occupation and has passed through periods of turmoil from time to time. But what we are witnessing now is unprecedented. It's not an uprising. It's It's not an insurgency or a revolt, it's a revolution. And Kashmiris have clearly demonstrated that they have rejected the brutal Indian occupation. Now they are not seeking a redress of their grievances. They are seeking a change of destiny. Kashmiri resistance has never been stronger and more determined. The second ingredient, the Kashmiri leadership. The youth that was the follower is now the leader. Better educated, some educated abroad, and attuned to modern modes of activism, especially adept at social media and provocative videos. They are now the driving force of the movement. The future of Kashmir rests with them. Third ingredient, Pakistan's diplomacy. Kashmiris would not have come thus far without Pakistan's help. And as they move forward, Pakistan's help would be even more critical. The plain truth is, Pakistan cannot escape its responsibility to help Kashmir, as Kashmir is embedded in its history, identity, and moral purpose. But unfortunately, Pakistan's ability to garner international support for Kashmir has diminished over the years. International politics has changed to India's advantage, and Pakistan holds a relatively weaker hand vis-à-vis India. I'm not making it up. Only last Thursday, Prime Minister Imran Khan said that Pakistan was currently facing, quote-unquote, the most difficult period of its history. The challenge of Pakistan's diplomacy is to work on international opinion and bring multiple pressures to bear on the Indian government. But the reality is, and this is especially intended for my Kashmiri brothers, the reality is a country's voice only as loud as its economic weight, military potential, and diplomatic stature. Let's be honest about that. So what does Pakistan do to help itself and help Kashmir to strengthen itself economically and politically, not only to strengthen its hand vis-à-vis international community, but also in relation to India? I must say the third element, ingredient, Pakistani and Kashmiri diaspora, I must say there's a lot of room for improvement in the efforts of both to step up their campaign for Kashmir. Kashmiris need to learn from other diaspora groups how to create a better awareness here in the US, especially to put political pressure on their congressmen. Look at the Indians, Armenians, Cambodians, Syrian opposition. You just cannot only rely on these events. These events are a platform, a motivating force. But you need to spread out, get hold of your congressmen and organize some support there. The way things work in the Congress, you don't have to get hold of a whole lot of members. Just a few influential members who can speak for you. For lobbying purposes, it's not the numbers, but the weight that counts in the Congress. Now the four instruments of putting pressure. First, the international community. Keep in mind that there is no international issue that is handled outside the framework of national interests. Big powers don't wake up one morning and say, let's solve this problem because it is hurting people or violating moral principles or human rights. Big powers are never honest brokers. Their interests are global, and to resolve a conflict invariably involves a conflict of interest. They generally like to keep the status quo, which usually favors a more powerful country whose friendship is more important than that of the other party. Unfortunately, India has used this influence in Washington to get it on its side. Both the United States and India need each other. The United States needs India to contain China, and India needs the United States as a source of capital and technology, and as a partner in fulfilling Indian national security and foreign policy objectives. And both have shared perceptions in the region. They are using each other to advance their respective interests. Modi would use the relations with Washington to strengthen his hand vis-à-vis Pakistan, particularly to get a pass for his brutal repression in Kashmir. And with his tough approach to Pakistan, he is serving American interests in South Asia. The United States keeps repeating the standard line that the dispute should be resolved through direct negotiations between the parties. But it forgets that given its heavy engagement in the region on behalf of India, it too has become a party. The United States should recognize that the totality of its interests, current and future, in the region will not be served if the Kashmir dispute and the relations between India and Pakistan are not addressed. Such is the painful reality of international politics. Such is the painful reality of not only politics but also the think tank community. Think tanks, with some notable exceptions, invariably embrace politically correct narratives and shun taboo subjects. They are not immune to ideology, politics, self-interest, and personal ambition. That's the crux of the neglect Kashmir suffers in Washington. So don't expect any help from there in solving the Kashmir dispute. Even China and the Islamic world pay only lip service. The United Nations resolutions are important, they are valid, but there's a difference between validity and effectiveness. United Nations is only as effective as the big powers want it to be. It's essentially a big powers club to protect their own interests. Look at the different crises in the world: Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, which has led to millions of deaths, injuries, and human displacement. What has the United Nations done to solve these problems? International Human Rights Organization, Human Rights Mission are very important. Dr. Parker made some very valid points, and I agree with her entirely. Islamic world. Most of the influential countries in the Islamic world, and that's a reality, are allied with Washington and also have friendly ties with India. So they don't want to oppose their policies and interests. Yes, they are friends of Pakistan also. Yes, they are helpful to Pakistan, but in other ways. Let's be honest, from their perspective, they feel that they can help Pakistan either with the billions or with the Kashmir cause. Not both. That's the reality. A day is not very far when Pakistan will be strong enough that these countries will not have to make a choice between the two. Pakistan will only ask for Kashmir, and hopefully it will get some results. Kashmiris need to be patient. We will get there. So I speak for all of you in saying that Pakistan, after passing some testing times in the past several years, is clearly on the mend across the board. The internal security picture has vastly improved. Pakistan military is to be complimented. Democracy is taking roots. National unity is more cohesive. The nation is showing more resolve and sense of optimism. I've never seen such optimism in the last 40 years or so. And above all, economic outlook is showing promise. Pakistan's foreign policy has been energized under Prime Minister Imran Khan, and we are seeing a major uptake in Pakistan's image and clout. There is a new confidence by major international players in Pakistan's internal security, political stability, and economic future, for which, as I said, both civil and military leadership deserve credit. Next, we come to the last and most important instrument in putting pressure on India.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Toki, for this important perspective. May I now request Ambassador Dr. Asad Majid Khan to please share his views on this important occasion.
Distinguished guests, members of the Pakistani and Kashmiri community, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. Thank you very much for joining us today for this special event on the occasion of Kashmir Solidarity Day. First of all, my profound gratitude to all the guest speakers for being here with us today. And I'd like to particularly thank Ambassador Toki Hussain, my teacher and mentor, for his very, very kind words directed at me and my team. I would also like to extend my special thanks to the President of Azad Kashmir for his video message, which has put us wise on the international legal dimensions of the dispute and Pakistan's position on Kashmir. I must say that all the presentations today have actually even deepened my own understanding. And I must thank all the speakers, particularly Ms. Parker, for sharing her insights of the workings within the Human Rights Council. And I agree that the kind of receptivity that we are seeing at the Human Rights Council is unprecedented. But frankly, this is because what we are seeing in the Indian occupied Kashmir in terms of repression, oppression and atrocities is also unprecedented. And I think that is what is finally attracting and catching the world's attention. This is my first public event as Ambassador of Pakistan to the United States of America. To begin my assignment with an event on Kashmir is an added honor. Kashmir and Kashmiris remain the closest to the hearts of all Pakistanis in Pakistan and those living abroad. Kashmir Solidarity Day is observed all over the world to pay homage to thousands of Kashmiri martyrs who have lost their lives in their struggle for their legitimate rights to self-determination and freedom from Indian subjugation. This day is to express our unity with the people of Indian occupied Kashmir as we reaffirm our resolve to extend our moral, political and diplomatic support to the people of Kashmir in their struggle for their right to self-determination. Ladies and gentlemen, today the entire nation of Pakistan came together to express solidarity and unity with our Kashmiri brethren. Just yesterday, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, addressed the UK Parliament and brought attention to the plight of the people of Kashmir Valley. The unflinching belief of Kashmiri people in their rightful destiny fills my heart with great pride. This enables them to keep moving forward in the face of brutal repression by Indian security forces. Grave human rights violations and atrocities perpetuated by the occupying forces have been a norm for the brave people of Kashmir. No words could rightfully describe the depth of suffering, agony and distress that the people of Indian occupied Kashmir continue to endure. The situation has, unfortunately, only worsened in the past 2.5 years since renewed momentum in the Kashmiri struggle has been witnessed. Many forms of torture and humiliation, including rape and blinding through pellet guns, are a norm in the occupied territory. The realities of today's Kashmir include deployment of more than 700,000 security forces, imposition of frequent curfews, midnight raids on homes and arbitrary arrests, blocking of internet services, and extrajudicial murders. While this happens, the legitimate representatives of the people of Kashmir remain under perpetual detention. Ladies and gentlemen, India's forcible occupation of the large parts of the state of Jammu and Kashmir in 1947 should be a cause of grave concern for the international community. The world needs to be reminded that it was India which went to the United Nations but later backed away from the promises it made to the international community, depriving the people of Kashmir of their right to self-determination. In fact, you could see one of the statements made by Prime Minister Nehru as a promise inscribed on the banner behind him. India remains in violation of the numerous Security Council resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir, which clearly pronounce that the future status of Jammu and Kashmir would be decided through the democratic means of a free and impartial plebiscite conducted under the auspices of the United Nations. India has unfortunately defied the United Nations over the years through obfuscation, diversion, and aggression. India has been involved in gross human rights violations in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which have been recorded by a number of international organizations over the decades. Last year is particularly significant as two important reports have been released on the human rights situation in Kashmir by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and all parties parliamentary group in UK. These reports quote numerous instances of gross human rights violations, including sexual assault, torture, arbitrary detention, use of pellet guns, restrictions on freedom of expression, and others. These reports strongly criticize the legal cover that has been given to Indian occupation forces under the draconian Public Safety Act and the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and urge the Government of India to repeal or amend these inhuman laws. The increasing international denunciation of India's brutal campaign is indeed a step in the right direction. However, there is still a lot to be done that will help pave the way for early resolution of Kashmir dispute in accordance with the fundamental principles of humanitarian and international law. Ladies and gentlemen, as Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, during his address to the United Nations General Assembly in September 2018, clearly pronounced that the just resolution of Kashmir dispute is the key to lasting peace in South Asia. The international community therefore has vital stakes in bringing peace and stability in South Asia. We would therefore urge the international community, including friendly countries like the United States, to play their due role in resolving this long-standing dispute. India considers the silence of the world community, and especially of the United States, as a vote of confidence to its continued policy of unbridled and brutal state terrorism. As an internationally respected defender of human rights, the United States of America bears a moral responsibility to act. The US administration must call upon the Government of India to put an end to the reign of terror and genocide in occupied Kashmir and fulfill its international obligations under international law. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I'd like to once again reiterate that Pakistan will continue to extend its unflinching moral, political and diplomatic support in just struggle of the Kashmiri people for their right to self-determination. Our support will continue till the realization of the cherished dream for freedom of millions of Kashmiris from draconian Indian occupation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. This concludes our today's event. I would like to once again thank all the guest speakers and participants present here today. Please join us for dinner served